Hello and welcome to the complete Java developer course, beginner to expert. In this lecture, we will learn how to exactly use this course and how you could get the most out of this course. So the very first thing is the prerequisites of this course. So actually, you don't need to have any prior coding experience before beginning this course. Even if you have a basic understanding of how the computer works and how to basically operate the computer, that must be sufficient to learn Java by using this course. The only thing which we need to do before starting this course is install a few tools. So for writing the Java code, we actually need a Java JDK. The next thing which we need is the IntelliJ IDEA, which is nothing but an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment, in which basically we will be writing our Java code. So these two softwares are actually available to download from the internet, and they are actually free of cost. And in the course, I will be teaching you guys how to basically download and install these two softwares even before we begin to write some Java code. How to use this course? There are a few things which you need to keep in mind before starting this course. The very first thing is that please do not skip any lecture. And the reason for that is that all the lectures in this course are interlinked. That is, one lecture is dependent upon another. And if you are a complete beginner to Java, then I would highly recommend you to follow each and every lecture and not to skip any lecture in between. Ask questions. If you are a beginner in Java, then you might have some difficulty learning this course. So if you have any questions or if you don't understand some things, feel free to ask me in the discussion section and I will be there to help you. Practice writing code. This course can be best utilized if you practice writing code. So if you follow this course, then write the code along with me and it will be a better way for you to learn from this course. So make sure that you not only watch the videos in this course, but also practice the code which is specified in this course. Seek my help. Again, if you find any difficulty, if you don't understand any concepts which are explained in this course, then feel free to ask me for help. I will always be there to help you guys out. Just post your question or just post your query in the discussion section of this course. So that's it. Enjoy the course. Thank you. Hello and welcome to your very first Java programming tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how we could download the Java JDK, which stands for Java Developers Kit, so that you could run your first Java program on your computer. So the first thing which we need to do is that you actually need to download the Java JDK from the Java's official website so that you could run your Java applications or you could run your Java program. So in order to download the Java JDK, you simply go to Google and you type in download Java JDK, hit enter, and as you could see, the first link which pops up is going to be the download link for the Java JDK. So we simply open it up, and now as you could see, we are presented with two options. The first option is going to be for downloading Java and the second option is going to be for downloading NetBeans. Now in this case, we are going to select this option right here to download Java JDK. So we simply select it. And as you could see, when we select that option, we are redirected to a new page. Now, if we scroll down right here, you could notice that this option right here is the option which we are going to select. So if you're working with the Windows 64-bit PC, we are going to select this option right here. And if you're working with the Windows 32-bit PC, then we are going to go with this option right here. Before selecting it, we actually need to accept the license agreement. So simply select this button right here or this checkbox. And once we select it, you could simply click on the download link right over here. And also make sure that if you're using Mac or Linux, you download the relevant versions to it. So in this case, as I'm using the Windows 64-bit version, I'm going to select this, and once you select it, your download is going to start here. But I'm going to cancel my download, and that is because I already have Java installed on my computer. So once the JDK is finished downloading, you could simply open up this exe file, and actually it is going to guide you through the installation process of the Java JDK. And once the installation process is ready, we have successfully set up the Java JDK. Now in order to check if you have successfully downloaded or you have successfully installed the Java JDK on your computer, so in order to cross verify it, you could simply go to your computer, go to C, go to program files, and we are going to have a folder which is called as Java. So if we select this folder right here, as you could see, this folder right here is the JDK which we have downloaded. So if we go to JDK and bin, as you could see from the JDK folder, we have successfully downloaded and installed the Java JDK. Now once this is set up, we are actually good to go and we are ready to download our next application, which is the integrated development environment for Java. So once we have finished downloading and installing the Java JDK, we could proceed and install the next application, which is the IntelliJ IDEA, which is an integrated development environment for writing Java code. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to download and install Java JDK on your computer and how to finally verify that the JDK is actually installed on your computer. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. The Java code. So now let's go ahead and learn how to basically download and install IntelliJ IDEA. So simply go to Google and type in download IntelliJ IDEA. And the first link which pops up is from the jetbrains.com. So the IntelliJ IDEA is actually developed by JetBrains. So simply click this first link, and as you could see, we actually have two options to download the IntelliJ IDEA version. So basically there is a community edition and there is an ultimate edition. So basically whenever you download the ultimate edition, you actually need to pay for that, and the community edition is actually free. So what you could do is that you could simply hit this button for download and your download should be started. So you simply need to save this setup file, and basically after saving the setup file, you simply need to open this thing up and install the IntelliJ IDEA. So actually I already have this file saved on my computer, that is the setup file. So I'm going to basically skip this downloading process, but you actually need to save this file, and once you hit this button, the setup file will eventually be downloaded onto your computer and it should be present in your download folder. So once you hit the save file, the file download should begin, and the file size is actually 253 MB. So once you have basically downloaded the IntelliJ setup, you just need to open up the setup file. So if you open up your downloads folder, you should be able to see this kind of file in your downloads folder. So you simply need to open this thing up and basically run it, and the installation process should start for you. Then simply click yes, hit next, and this is the folder, or this is the location where your actual application is going to be stored. So hit next and actually create a desktop shortcut, click next, click install, and the installation should begin, and it should eventually take some time for this thing to actually completely get installed. So once this is done installing, what you could do is that you could simply click this checkbox right here, which basically allows us to run the IntelliJ, and hit finish, and your application is going to start loading up for you. So now once you are starting up IntelliJ IDEA for the very first time, you will get this kind of window, and you actually won't have this section here. And the reason why I have this section is because I have installed IntelliJ IDEA previously on my computer, and some of the files are actually present on my computer. So what you need to do is that when you install this for a very first time, you actually need to go to create new project. And when it is going to ask you to create a new project, simply select the Java project. And after selecting Java, you actually need to set up the project SDK. Now, whenever you are running this for a very first time, there is actually no version selected. So basically, in order to give the project SDK path, we actually go to new and then select the option for JDK. And basically here you actually need to specify the path where your actual JDK lies. So for example, if you have downloaded Java JDK, which was mentioned in the previous tutorial, you could simply go to program files, then go to Java, and you select this JDK version right here and hit OK. And after hitting OK, the actual JDK version should be loaded up for you, and you will be basically good to go. Now you simply need to hit next once again, give your project some name, and hit finish. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to basically install IntelliJ IDEA on your computer. And if you face any problem installing this application on your computer, you could basically go ahead and post in your question in the discussions, and I will be there for helping you out. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and from the next tutorial onwards, we are going to get started with writing some Java code. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to create our very first Java program in IDEA IntelliJ. So in the previous tutorial we have downloaded and installed the IDEA IntelliJ platform so as to write our Java applications or so as to write our Java programs. Now in this tutorial we are actually going to learn how we could write a simple hello world program in IntelliJ IDEA. So the first thing which we need to do is that we actually need to open up IntelliJ IDEA. Now if we have successfully downloaded IntelliJ IDEA and if you have installed it, you could have a desktop icon right over here. So we simply double click on it so as to open it. Now when you open up IntelliJ IDEA for the very first time, we are going to see a window like this, and the first thing which we need to do is that we need to create a new project. So we simply select this option which is called as create new project. So make sure that you click this option right here. And when we select this option, a small window is going to pop up. And in this window, we actually need to select the type of project which we want to develop. So basically there are few options here. First one is Java, then we have Android, we also have Java FX, we also have the IntelliJ platform plugin. But in this case, as we are using or we are going to create a Java program, we need to select Java here. So if we have Android selected, make sure that you select Java. And after selecting Java, as you could see on the right hand side, we have a few libraries and frameworks, and we are not going to use any of these libraries right now at the moment. So make sure that you have unchecked these options here. And the next thing which we do is that after selecting Java, we simply click on next, and again we click on next. And the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to name our project. So let's say we are creating a new project. So let's say we name it as new project. Then once you have named your project, simply click finish. And as you could see, your project folder has been created by IntelliJ IDEA, and you could see the contents of the folder by clicking on this arrow. And as you could notice, there is one folder which is called as the source folder. Now the Java code which we are going to write is going to get contained, or it is going to be present in this source folder right here. Now the very first thing which we actually need to do before writing any code is that we initially need to create a class. Now, whenever we are going to write a Java program, the first thing which we need to do is that we need to create a basic class in our source folder. So in order to create a class, we simply right click on this folder, go to new, and select the option as Java class. So when we select this option, we actually need to name this class. So let's say we name it as my class. For the sake of simplicity, we have named it as my class, but you could name it anything which you want. Then we simply click OK. And as you could see, the class has been automatically created for us. Now these lines of code right here are actually unnecessary, and it is automatically added by the IntelliJ IDEA. So we are going to go ahead and delete these lines. Now as you could see, we only have the class with us, and this is the basic structure of class. So let's understand what this thing right here is actually is. So the first thing which we notice is that this is our class name which we have given to the class. Now this is a keyword which is called as class, which specifies that this thing right here is actually a class, and this thing right here which is called as the public keyword is actually used in order to mention that this class is public. And whenever a class is public, it simply means that it is accessible to all the other classes. So once we have this class set up, the next thing which we actually need to do is that we need to create a main method inside this class. So in order to create a main method, pay close attention how we create the structure of the main method. So for creating a main method, we type public static void main string args, and after it we give a opening and a closing curly bracket, and the code for the method is going to go right in between these two curly braces. So now if you don't understand what this method is, basically whenever we want to write in some code in the class, we actually create a main method or a simple method, and a method is something which actually is going to contain the code which we want to execute. So in order to create a main method, we have used this structure, and let's go through the code word by word what it means. So basically this public keyword is similar to this public keyword right here. This thing right here means that this class is public, and this public keyword means that this method is public. Then we have a keyword which is called as static, and for the time being it's not necessary to understand the significance of the static keyword, because as we move along in this course we are going to eventually go into more depth in order to understand what static is. Now the next thing is this void, and what void means is that whenever we are going to execute the code in this method, it is not going to return any value. So this is the return type. So in this case, as this method is not going to return anything, we have specified a void here. And this main keyword signifies that this is the main method of this class, which is called as my class. And after it, as you could notice that in the parentheses in between two brackets right here, we have specified string args, which stands for string arguments, and what this means is that we actually need to pass in some arguments to this main function right here. And after typing it, we have a opening and a closing curly brace, which is used to indicate that the method starts from here and it ends here. Now inside this we are going to type in the code for displaying something onto the output screen. So in order to display something in the output screen in Java, we type system.out.println, and println is actually a method. So whenever we type println, as you could see, there is a small pop-up right here which says println, and as you could see on the left hand side it says m, and what m means is that println is basically a method. So if we select this option and press enter, as you could see, the println method is automatically added, and this method is going to display something onto the output screen, and whatever text which we want to display on the output screen should be written in between these two parentheses. So we go in between these two parentheses, use double quotes. So between these double quotes we are going to type in the text which we want to display. So we type hello world. So once we are done with this, we are basically done with the program. So we save the code by pressing Ctrl S, and it is going to save the code. And when we want to actually run this program, we simply right click here and select this option which is called as run. So as you could see, when we run our program, down right here we got the output of our program. So basically it is displaying the output as hello world, which is the text which we have specified right over here. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to create a class in Java and how to create a main method and how to print out some text onto the output screen by using the println method. So basically we have our project. Inside the project we go inside the source folder and we create a new class which is called as my class, and we have used the keyword which is called as public in order to mention that this class right here is public. Then we have created the main method, and the structure of the main method is this. So basically whenever we are creating the main method, we type public static void main, and in the arguments we pass string args. Then in order to print something on the output screen, we have typed this line of code right here. So basically this means that on the system for output, we are going to use the method which is called as the println method, which is called as the print line method, which is used to print something on the output screen. And finally within these parentheses we specify the words in double quotes which we actually want to display. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are actually going to learn something about variables. So what are variables? So before learning about variables, let's go ahead and delete this line of code right here which we are not going to need in this tutorial. So make sure that you delete it. So once you have deleted it, we are actually going to create a variable, but before creating a variable, let us understand what a variable is. So for example, if you remember from your algebra class, we used to have some things like x equals 9, y equals 8 and something like that. So what we used to do is that we used to have some things like some alphabets which were used in order to store some value into it, and later on whenever we use this value, so for example let's say we had an equation like x minus a equals 5, then we actually used to substitute the value of x equals to 9 over here, and then we have used this value to calculate the value of a. So that was a basic variable in algebra, and variables in Java are quite a bit similar. So whenever we want to create a variable in Java, we could actually use a variable, but before using a variable in Java, we actually need to declare it. So the next thing which we are going to talk about is going to be the variable declaration. Now whenever we want to actually declare a variable, we need to mention or we need to specify what type of variable it is. And the type of variable is nothing but it is the type of data which we are going to actually store in that particular variable. So for example, if we want to store an integer value, we need to declare a variable as integer. So let's go ahead and declare a variable. So let's say we want to name the variable as x. So the first thing which we need to do is that we need to declare the type of the variable. So in order to mention the type as integer, we are going to type in int, and after int we are actually going to type in the variable name which we want to use. So let's say we want to name the variable as x. So once we are done with this, we are done with the code. So now the only thing which we need to do is that we need to mention a semicolon right over here, so as to mention the end of the statement. So as you could see, this thing right here is called as the variable declaration. So once we have declared the variable, we could now actually use this variable to store some value. So let's say you want to store a value of 7 into this variable x. So in order to do that, we go right here and we type x equals 7, and we end the statement by using a semicolon, and this is actually going to store the value of 7 into the variable x. Now if we want to verify if whether the value of 7 is actually stored in x, we could simply print out this variable by using the system.out.println. So let's type in system.out.println, and within parentheses we are going to mention the value of x. So inside here we simply type in x, and what this line of code is going to do is that it is going to display the value which is stored in x. So whenever this line of code executes, it is going to check the value of x. And now as the value of x is 7, it is going to display the value as 7 onto our output screen. Now in order to check it, we simply save the code, and now in order to run our program, we click run, and as you could see on the output screen, we have a value of 7. Now what if we change the value of x to, let's say, 10? So now once we have changed the value, we actually need to save the code once again by pressing Ctrl S. Now we run the code again by clicking on this run. And as you could see, now it is displaying the value as 10 on the output screen, and that is because we have changed the value of the variable. And one more thing which I would like to mention is that actually we could use any data type for a variable. So for example, if we want to save a name into the variable, so instead of an integer variable, we are going to go with a string variable or a character variable. Now if we want to store a decimal value, we are going to use a variable which is called as a double. So there are various types of variables, but for the sake of simplicity, in this tutorial we have considered a integer type of variable. So int is basically a keyword which is used to declare a variable. So int is basically a keyword which specifies that the variable which we are going to use is going to store the integer value. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood what are variables and how to use them to store some value into it. So just remember that a variable is nothing but it is going to hold a value of something. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are actually going to learn how we could accept the user input and we could display the data which is entered by the user. So in this tutorial what we are going to do is that we are going to ask the user to enter some value, and when the user enters the value, we are going to capture the value and we are going to display that particular value onto the output screen. Now in the previous tutorial we have already created a variable and we have learned how to declare a variable, and in this tutorial we are going to use the same concept of variable in order to store a value, but this time instead of specifying the value, we are going to accept the value from the user. So whenever you want to actually accept the value from the user, we are going to need something which is called as a scanner. Now what the scanner does is that it is going to listen to the keyboard actions, or we could say that it is going to capture the user input and it is going to store it into something. So whenever we want to create a scanner, actually scanner is a class which is the inbuilt class, and before using scanner we actually need to create an object of scanner. So whenever we want to create object of something, what we do is that we type in the class name. So the class name of scanner is scanner, so we type scanner, and before typing in scanner or before using scanner, we actually need to import scanner. Now whenever we are going to use a class which is outside this main class, we actually need to import it. So in order to import the scanner, I have already typed import java.util.scanner, and basically the scanner is present in the java.util package. So we import it from java.util package by typing import java.util.scanner. So once it is imported, what we do is that in order to create the object of scanner, or in order to create an object of any class, we type the class name, which is scanner. Then we give the object some name. So let's say we name it as SC. Then we type this equals new, and new is a keyword for creating a new object for a class. Then again we specify the class name, which is scanner, and within the parentheses we actually specify system.in. So we type system.in, and system.in is basically for accepting the user input, and finally we end the statement by using a semicolon. So if you don't understand what this thing right here is, it is called as creating an object for the class scanner. So as we want to use the methods inside this class, we have created the object of this class right here, and we have named the object as SC, and this line of code right here is used in order to create the object of scanner class. So if you find it confusing, then just remember that this is a basic object initialization where we have created the object in order to accept the user input. So once we are done creating the scanner, the next thing which we actually need to do is that we need to ask the user to enter some value. So let's display some text on the screen. So we type system.out.println to display something on the screen, and we actually ask the user to enter some value. So we type enter value of X. Now the user is actually going to enter the value of X, but the thing is that we actually need a variable X so that we could store the value which is given by the user. So in order to do that, we actually need to create a variable. So in order to create a variable, as X is going to store the integer value, we type integer, then we give the variable name X, and we end the statement. Now once we have the variable, we actually need to store the value which is entered by the user. So we go right below this line, and as we want to store the value in X, we type X equals, and now actually we want to get the value which is entered by the user. Now as I've earlier mentioned, we are going to use the scanner object to do so. So we type SC, which is the scanner object, and the method which is used for extracting the value entered by the user is going to be nextInt. So in order to specify a method, we give a dot operator, or we give a dot, and then use this method right here which is called as nextInt, which means next integer. So this method right here is going to extract the value which is entered by the user, and then we end the statement by giving a semicolon. Now as we have the value entered by the user into the variable X, now we actually want to check if the entered value is actually stored in the variable X. So in order to display the contents of the X, we type system.out.println, and we simply display the value of X. So once it is done, we are good to go. So we save the code and we run it. So as you could see, it is displaying enter value of X. So let's say we enter the value of X to be 5. So once we enter the value of X to 5, we press enter, and as you could notice, it has displayed the value of 5 right here. So that's how you basically accept the user input in Java. So whenever we want to accept an user input, there are numerous methods, but the simplest method is by using scanner. So basically we have used the scanner and we have created a scanner object. Now if you are confused with objects and objects creation, then it's okay. As a beginner, you will have some problem in understanding these things, but as we move along the course, it would be more clear to you what is object initialization. So basically what we have done is that we have created a scanner object right here, and this is the basic line of code which we write when we want to create a scanner object, and this right here is our object, and this is the basic code for creating a variable or declaring a variable. Then we have simply used system.out.println so as to ask the user to enter the value of X. Then we have used X variable in order to store the value entered by the user, and we have used sc.nextInt in order to extract the value, and we have stored it in X. And then finally, in order to check if the value is actually stored in X, we have simply printed out the contents of X. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to accept the user input and how to display the user input on the output screen. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and this tutorial is going to be a practice example tutorial. So in this tutorial we'll be revising what we have done previously. So for this tutorial we will be creating a simple Java program which is going to accept the name from the user, and it is going to display the user's name upon accepting it. So now let's go ahead and get started with the program. So as we are going to store the name of a particular person, the very first thing which we need is that we actually need a variable to store his name. So actually the type of variable which we need here is going to be the string variable. So in order to create a string variable, we just type in the keyword string and then simply give the variable some name. So let's say the name is going to be name here. So we have basically declared the string variable which is called as name. Now the next thing which we do is that we actually need to ask the user to enter his name. So in order to do that, that is displaying some text onto the output screen, we type in system.out.println, and let's now ask the user, and this should be println. And now let's ask the user to enter his name. So we type in enter your name. Now once we have asked the user to enter his name, the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to have something which is going to accept his name. So basically, to accept anything from the user, we use a scanner. So now even before using a scanner, we actually need to create a scanner. So basically, in order to create a scanner object, we type in scanner. Let's name this scanner as SC equals new scanner, and inside it we just pass in system.in. So basically this thing right here is nothing but the object of scanner. So basically whenever we need to accept anything from the user, we use the scanner. Now even before using a scanner, we need to declare the scanner. So this thing right here is nothing but a declaration of a scanner. So once we have declared the scanner and once we have named this scanner as SC, now let's go ahead and actually use this scanner to accept the name from the user. So in order to accept something from the user, we type the scanner name, then type in dot, and then in order to accept the value from the user, we type in next. So what this thing does is that it is going to accept the string from the user, and actually if you need to accept an integer value, we type in next int, but as in this case we are going to accept a string from the user, so for string you simply use a method which is called as next. So simply type in next, and actually this thing is going to accept a string from the user. Now we actually need a variable to save this string right here. So basically we are going to store this thing into the name variable. So we type in name equals sc.nextInt. So what this line of code is basically going to do is that it is going to accept the name from the user and it is going to store the value of name into the name variable. So now once we have the value of name stored in the name variable, let's now go ahead and let's just display out the value of name on the output screen. So in order to do that, we type in system.out.println, and in order to display the value which is stored in the name variable, simply type in name over here. So what this line of code is going to do is that it is basically going to print out the value which is stored in the name variable. So now even before running this code, let's go ahead and understand what we have done. So in this tutorial, we actually wanted to design a program which is going to accept the name from the user and it is going to later display it. So basically to store a name, we have created a name variable which is of the type string. So basically name is nothing but a string of characters. So we have used the string variable to store the name. Then after this, we have declared a scanner, as a scanner is actually required to accept the input from the user. Now once we have done these things, the next thing which we did is that we actually wanted to ask the user to enter his name, and therefore we have typed in this line of code which says enter your name. So this is basically going to display out the text like enter your name on the output screen. After this, when the user is asked to enter his name, as he is going to enter his name, we need something to capture it. So basically to capture the user input, we have created the scanner object which we have here. So basically to accept anything via scanner, we type the scanner object name dot next. So basically if you're accepting strings, we use next, and if you're accepting integers, we use next int. So we use next, and basically the value which this thing returns is stored into the name variable. Now once everything is done, the final thing which we need to do is that we actually need to print out the value entered by the user. So finally we have typed in system.out.println and passed in the variable name right over here. So now in order to check if this program actually performs correctly, let's go ahead and save the code and let's try to run this program. So as you could see, this is what we get as an output. So it is asking us to enter your name. So let's type in. So when I typed in my name and when I hit enter, as you could see, my name appeared right over here. So that's basically how you create a simple program which is going to accept your name and it is later going to display it. So this was a simple practice example that we have covered, and the main purpose of this practice example was to revise the basic concepts as the string data type, the scanner, and the system.out.println, which is basically used to display something on the output screen. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood the significance of each line of code in this tutorial. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. So let's go ahead and declare the second variable. So we type the second variable as integer b. Now one more thing which I would like to mention here is that in the previous tutorials we have learned that we are going to declare a variable like this. But as you could see, the two variables which are declared here, which are a and b, are of the same type, which is integer. So instead of specifying both of them on a separate line, what you could do is that you could delete one of them. You could go right here, right after a, give a comma, and then specify the second variable which is called as b. So what this thing does is that it is going to declare two variables in a single line. So once you have two variables, the next thing which we do is that we actually save some value into it. So let's say we want to save a value of 20 into the first variable. So we type a equals 20, and this equals is called as the assignment operator, which is going to assign a value to a particular variable. Now the second thing which we do is that we assign a value to our second variable. So we type b equals, let's say 30. And now let's say we want to perform an addition operation. So in order to perform an addition operation, we actually need to have one more variable which is going to store the result of these two. So let's go ahead and create one more variable. So we go right here, we give a comma, and we create one more variable called c. So once we have the third variable, we could use the third variable to store the result of addition of these two variables. So we type c equals a, then to add the two numbers we use a plus sign. So plus sign is basically used in order to add numbers in Java. So we type c equals a plus b, and then finally we end the statement with a semicolon. So as you could see, the two numbers have been successfully added. Now the only thing which we need to do is that we actually need to display the result, and the result in this case is going to be addition. And the result of the addition operation is stored in the variable c. So we simply display the value which is stored in c. So for displaying, we type system.out.println, and we simply print out the value of c variable. So inside the parentheses we type in c. So once this is done, we save the code and then we try to run our program. So we simply right click over here and select the option which is called as run. So as you could see, we got the result of our addition operation. So it is displaying the value as 50, as 20 plus 30 is equal to 50. So we could also perform other operations like subtraction, multiplication, and division. So for example, let's say if you have a minus sign here, it is going to subtract b from a. And let's say if you want to multiply it, so for multiplying we use the symbol which resembles like a star, and it is called as an asterisk. So we could use this symbol in order to multiply two things. So if we want to multiply a and b, so we put a star symbol here, we save the code, and when we run the code, as you could see, we got a result as 600, and that is because when 20 is multiplied by 30, we get the result as 600. And also we could perform a division operation. So for example, let's say we type 20 divided by 30, and now if we save the code and when we run the code, as you could see, we got the result as 0. And actually if you think about it, we should not have a result as 0, it should be in decimals. So the reason why we got this result to be 0 is that we have declared a variable type of integer. So integer is basically not going to print out the decimal values. So whenever you want the answer in the decimal values, instead of declaring the variables as integer, you should have declared it as doubles. So when you type double here, basically what it signifies is that these three variables are going to be present in the decimal values, and finally we get the result in decimal values as well. So if we save the code now and we run it, as you could see, now we got the answer as 0.666 recurring. So remember, whenever you are dealing with the decimal points, make sure that you declare your variables in doubles, or in any other case, you could simply keep it as integer. And also one more operation which I need to mention here is going to be the modulus operation. So let's say if we change this to let's say 70, or let's simply change it to 7, and let's change this thing to 3. So whenever we are going to divide 7 by 3, we get 3 2s are 6, and finally 1 is remaining, and we call the remaining thing as a remainder. So whenever you want to actually access the remainder, we use an operator which is called as the modulus operator, and this modulus operator is actually going to return us the remainder. So when we divide 7 by 3, we get the remainder as 1. So whenever we want to use, or whenever we want to extract a remainder, we use this operation, which is the percentage sign, which is called as the modulus operator. So when we save the code and when we run it, as you could see, we got the result as 1, which is nothing but the remainder. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to use mathematical operations while writing Java program. So that's it for this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn something about the increment and the decrement operator. So an increment operator is basically an operator whenever you want to increment a value of some variable by 1, and a decrement operator is something which is used when we want to decrement the value of some variable by 1. So in order to understand increment and decrement operators in much more depth, we are going to create a simple variable. So let's type in integer and let's name this variable as total. So once we have the variable declared, let's go ahead and save some value into this variable. So we type total equals, let's say the value stored is 20, and now let's increment this total by 1. So one thing which you could do in order to increment the total is you could simply type total equals, let's say, total plus 1. So this thing right here is basically going to increment the value of total by 1. But instead of doing this, we use the concept of increment operator. So in case of an increment operator, whenever you want to increase the value of variable by 1, we simply type total plus plus and simply give a semicolon after it. So what this thing does here is that it is going to take the total variable, it is going to check the value. Now the value which is stored in total variable is going to be equal to 20. So what this statement is going to do is that it is actually going to add one more to the current value of total. Now in order to check it if it really happens, we could type in system.out.println to actually check if the value of total is changed. Now in the parameters we specify total, and this thing right here is actually going to print out the final value of the total variable. So once we are done with this, we save the code and we right click on it and click on run, and as you could see, we got the value of total to be 21, and that is because we have incremented the value of total by 1. Now one more thing which you could do is that you could also decrement the value of total by 1. So instead of total plus plus, you could write in total minus minus, and what total minus minus does is that it is actually going to decrement the value of total by 1. So the initial value of total is 20, and when we type total minus minus, it is actually going to decrement its value by 1, and the result which we are going to get is going to be 19. So once we are done with this, we save the code, and in order to execute it, we right click on it and click run. And as you could see, in this case, we got the total value to be 19. So that's basically the concept of the increment and decrement operator, and you could use the increment and decrement operator as many number of times as you want. So let's say if you want to increment it again, so we could type total plus plus, and you could keep on adding this statement as many number of times as you want. So let's say if we copy this and paste it over here, so what is going to happen is that initially we have the total value to be 20, then we decrement it by 1, and then we increment it by twice. So the net effect is going to be the value of total is going to be incremented by 1. So now if we save the code and if we try to run it, and as you could see, we got the value of total to be 21. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood what are increment and decrement operators. So basically they are nothing but They are used in order to increment the value of a variable by 1 or in order to decrement the value of a variable by 1. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and this tutorial is going to be a practice example tutorial. And in this tutorial we are going to design a Java program which basically accepts two numbers from the user, and it is going to actually take these two numbers and it is going to basically add it. So the main purpose of this practice example is to the main significance of this practice example is to basically revise the concepts which we have covered in the previous sections. So now let's go ahead and let's get started with the tutorial. So as we need to accept two numbers from the user, we actually need to create two integer variables. So we type in integer, let's say n1, which stands for number 1, and let's say integer n2, which stands for number 2. Now once we have these two variables, let's go ahead and let's ask the user to enter these two variables. So we type in system.out.println, and in there we type in enter first number. Now in order to basically accept the first number, we actually need a scanner. So we also declare a scanner here. So we type scanner sc equals new scanner, and inside it we type in system dot in. So basically right here we have created the object of the scanner. Now let's use this object to accept the input from the user. So we type in sc dot next int, and basically whenever we are accepting integers we use sc.nextInt. So what this line of code right here is going to do, it is that it is basically going to accept this number which the user has entered, and now once it has accepted the number, we actually need to store that number into the variable n1. So we type n1 equals sc.nextInt. So it is going to extract the number entered by the user and it is going to store it into the variable n1. Now let's do the same thing with the second number. So we type in system.out.println, and let's ask the user to enter the second number. So we type enter second number, and now let's accept the number and store it into the n2 variable. So we type n2 equals sc.next int. So this should be next int, as we are accepting the integer value. Okay, now once we have these two accepted numbers, the only thing which we need to do is that we actually need to add these numbers and store it into a third variable. So we declare a third variable here which is called as, let's say, total. So in order to add these two numbers, we simply type in total equals n1 plus n2. So once we have the total with us, we simply need to display the result. So we type in system.out.println, and to display the value stored in the total variable, we simply pass in total variable over here to the system.out.println. So this basically is going to display the value which is stored in the total variable. So now let's go ahead and save the code, and let's try to run this thing and see if it works. So as you could see, it is displayed the text as enter first number. So let's say the first number is 10, hit enter. Enter second number, let's say the second number is 40, hit enter. So as you could see, it has returned us the result as 50, which is nothing but addition of these two numbers. So that's basically how you perform addition operation by accepting two numbers from the user. So basically in this tutorial what we have done is that initially we have declared some variables to accept the two numbers and a third variable to basically store the result. Then we have created a scanner in order to accept the user input, and after creating the scanner we have actually asked the user to enter the two numbers in these 4 lines of code. So this is for accepting the first number, this one is for accepting the second number. Now once we have these two numbers, we have added them up and stored them into a variable which is called as total. And finally, in order to display out the result, we have used system.out.println, and we have simply passed in the variable which actually holds the value of the result. So that's basically how you design a program to accept two numbers from the user, add them and display it on the output screen. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how to use multiple classes in your Java program. Now from the previous few tutorials we are using a single class which is called as the my class, and we have written a main method inside the class, and we are pretty much using the same main method in order to execute our code. But in this tutorial we are going to learn how to use multiple classes in your Java program. So you might be thinking that what is the need of using multiple classes in Java program? So the thing is that whenever you're developing big applications, so let's say you're working for a company and you're developing a Java application, then it is always better to have multiple classes for each function. So as far as the small program goes, you could accommodate everything in a single class, but whenever we are talking about huge programs, then it is always beneficial so as to have multiple classes in your Java program. So let's go ahead and learn how to add a new class and how to use it. So the first thing which we need to do in order to create a new class is that we go to the source folder right here. We right click on it, go to new and select a Java class. Now let's name this as my new class, then click OK. And as you could see, now a new class has been created. And also make sure that you delete this stuff, that is because we don't need it. As you could see in our source folder, we have two classes. The first class is this class which we already have, and the second class is going to be this class which is called as the my new class. Now let's go ahead and add a new method to this class. So whenever we are going to write in a method, we are going to type in public, and what public means is that this class is accessible to all the classes. Then we type void, and what void means is that this method is not going to return anything upon execution. Now after typing in void, the next thing which we mention is going to be the method name. So the method name for this is let's say this method is going to display a message. So the method name would be display message. So once we have the method name, we give parentheses and then opening and a closing curly bracket to include the code inside the method. Now let's go ahead and write in some simple code in this method. So as this method is going to display a message, we are going to type in system.out.println, and let's display a message as message from my new class. So as you could see, we have added a single line of code into this new method right here. So now once we have everything set up inside this class, the next thing which we do is that we actually use this class which is called as the my new class inside the previous class which is called as my class. Now whenever you want to use this class in the new class, what you do is that you initially need to create an object of this class. So in order to create an object of any class, first thing which we do is that we type in the class name. So for example, the class name of the second class is my new class, so we type my new class. So after having the class name, the next thing which we do is that we have the name for the object of the second class. So let's say we name this as my new class object, and this is nothing but the object of this class right here. So once we have the object created, we type this equals new, and again we type in the class name. So that is my new class. So as you could see, this line of code right here is nothing but object creation. And why we have created the object is because whenever we want to access the method inside this class, we are going to create the object of this class. And in order to create object of any class, first we type the class name, which is this my new class. Then we type in the object name, and we could name the object as anything, but for the sake of understanding, I have named it as my new class object. And what this means is that this is the object of this class. Then we type this equals, again we type the class name, give a parenthesis and give a semicolon. So this line of code right here is called as object initialization or object creation. Now once the object is created, you could use this object to use this method right here. So in order to do so, we switch to the first class. We use the object which we have just created, so we type my new class object, and in order to access this method, which is display message method, we give a dot operator and then type display message. So in this line of code right here, what we have done is that we have used this newly created object, and inside this object or inside this class we have a method which is called as display message. So in order to call this method, we have used a dot operator and then just typed in the method name. So now if we save the code and if we run it, as you could see, it is displaying the message as message from my new class. Now this statement is not printed anywhere inside the main class, but the thing is that this object initialization and the method call is basically going to call this method which is present in the second class inside our first class, and that's why when we run our first class, it is going to display the message which is written inside the second class. So that's basically how you use multiple classes in Java, and that's how you call a method from one class to the method in the another class. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to use multiple classes in Java. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how to use multiple parameters in our methods. So in the previous tutorial we have created one more new class which was called as the mynewclass.java, and in the previous few tutorials I have mentioned that this parentheses right here is actually used to display or in order to pass in a parameter. Now in this tutorial we are going to use a parameter in this method, and we are going to learn what parameters are and why they are used. So in this tutorial we are going to create a simple program which is going to accept the name from the user in this method right here. Then it is going to pass in our name to this method which is called as the display message, and it is going to do so by using a parameter, and then it is going to actually print out a message saying hello and our name. So let's go ahead and start with the tutorial. So the first thing which we need to do in order to accept the name from the user, we are going to use a scanner. So we type scanner, let's name the scanner as SC, then we type this equals new scanner, and inside it we type system.in. Now this line of code right here is nothing but we have created an object of the scanner class. Now once we are done with this, the next thing which we do is that we ask the user to enter his name. So we type system.out.println, and inside it we type enter your name. Now once it is done, the next thing which we do is that we actually need to store this name into some variable. So in order to store an integer, we have used a variable which was called as int, but in order to store a name, as the name is a string, we use a variable of the type string. So we type string, then type name of the variable, let's say name, then we type this equals sc.next. Now in order to accept the integer values, we have specified the scanner object name .next int, and that is because it was for accepting integer. But if we use next, as you could see, next is basically used in order to accept a string. So we type sc.next, and it is going to accept the name from the user, and it is going to store the name into the string variable. So once we have the name with us, the next thing which we want to do is that we want to pass in this name to this method right here. So in order to pass in, as I've already mentioned, we need to pass this name as a parameter to this method. So we type here string, and what we want to pass is going to be the name, so we type string name. And now inside this method we are going to use the same name in order to display our message. So we go right here and then we type system.out.println, and we are going to display the message as hello. And then finally, as we want to display the variable name, we type a plus and then type in name. So what this line of code is going to do is that it is going to take the value which is stored in this variable called name. It is going to print it out here. So what this line of code does is that it says hello, and it is going to display the name which we have passed. Now once we have this method set up, we actually need to call this method inside this class. So for calling this method inside this class, the first thing which we need to do is that we need to create object of this class right here. So in order to create an object, we go right here and then we type the class name, which is my new class. Then we name the object as, let's say, my new class object. Then we type this equals new my new class. So once we have created the object of the new class, the next thing which we need to do is that we need to use this object name to call this method, which is called as display message. So we use this object name. So we type the object name, which is my new class object. Then in order to use a method inside it, we type dot, and we are going to use a method which is called as display message. And to this we are actually going to pass in the name, as we want to display the name. So we type name over here. So now once we are done with this, we save the code, and when we run this code, as you could see, it is going to ask us for a name. So my name is Ashutosh. So I type in my name and press enter, and as you could see, it is displaying hello Ashutosh. And the thing is that actually we need to have a space here so that it displays my name properly. So I gave a space right here. And now if we save the code and we try to run it again, it is again going to ask my name. So I type in my name, press enter, and as you could see, now it is displaying my name in a proper format. So that's basically how you use parameters, or how you pass parameters to a method. So let's go ahead and revise what we have done in this tutorial. So the first thing which we needed to do is that we needed to accept the input from the user. So we have created a scanner object which is called as SC. Then we have displayed a message to the user so as to prompt him to enter his name. Then we have used the scanner object to store the name of the user. Then the next thing which we did is that we went on to this mynewclass.java, and as this method right here wants to display the name, we have passed in the name from the parameter section. So we have typed string name, and finally in order to display the name, we have used system.out.println. So it says hello, and this name right here is going to get passed over here. So once this is done, in order to use the method of this class inside this class, we have created an object of the new class right here. So my new class object is the object of this class right here, and when the object is created, we have used this object in order to call the method inside it. So this method right here is going to actually display the message, and as it is going to accept a name, we have passed in the name which we have just saved over here. So that's basically how you use methods with parameters. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to create a method with a parameter. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you. That is because it has a keyword called main. Now apart from this main method, we could include as many methods as we want inside this main class, which is called as the my class, and we could go ahead and create a new method, and we could call in that particular method inside our main method. So let's go ahead and create one more method. So in order to create one more method, we go right below this main class where this main class ends. We go right here and we use the same syntax in order to create a method. So the first thing which we need to do is that we need to type in public, but for the sake of the new method which we are creating, we are going to type in private. And what private means is that it is the exact opposite of public. So public means that this method is accessible to all, and what private means is that this method is only accessible to this class right here, which is called as the my class. So we type private, then we type static. After static, we type in void, and void is basically the return type which mentions that this method is not going to return anything. After void, we type in the method name. So let's say we want a method to display a message. So we type in the method name as, let's say, print. Then we use parentheses and opening and closing curly bracket to contain the code of this method. So once we have the method, we write some code into it. So we type system.out.println to display something on the screen, and let's say this says hello from second method. So as you could see, we have successfully created this method right here, which is called as the print method, which is basically going to print out some text onto the output screen. And as you could see, our main method is blank right now, and if we save the code and now if we go ahead and execute it, as you could see, it is not going to display anything. And the reason for that is that we have actually created this method right here, but method creation alone is not enough. In order to execute that method, you actually need to call it. So for the main method, we never called the main method, and that is because the main method is always going to get called when we run the program. So in order to call this method right here, we use something which is called as a method call. So in order to call a method, we simply type in the method name, which is print in this case, give a parenthesis and give a semicolon. And what this line of code is going to do is that it is going to call this method, and call is nothing but it is basically going to execute the code inside this method. So now once we have called this method inside our main method, we could save the code, and when we run it, as you could see, it is going to display a message as hello world from second method. So that's basically how you create multiple methods inside a single class, and you could create as many methods as you want, but the only thing which you need to take care of is that when you have created a method, you also actually need to call it. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you guys understood how to add multiple methods to the same class. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.